there are things I don't necessarily bring to this platform because I'm very intentional, but it's Friday. So I don't talk much about Trump, if at all, unless I'm interviewing his niece. And she'll probably be back. I was just on her podcast, Mary Trump.
I was like in the audience. I was in the audience watching you.
Were you?
Yeah, I was. And I jumped in the chat and tried to get your attention. I literally was in the audience, in the chat, jumping up and down, waving at you, going, Karen, it's me. Karen, it's me. Karen, you're doing a good job on Mary Trump show. Hey, Karen. Hey, Karen. Nothing.
No. Look, I think I was the only one in the chat, so I'm calling BS. The chat's a little bit behind the rest of us. So I was trying to pay attention, at the same time and chat at the same, I multitask. Well,
I should mention horrible. My chat name is David Webb 775. But
okay, that's probably why I completely ignored it. That would get you ignored quickly. Anyway. That was your mistake. Yes.
Anyway.
Awkward.
Is it though? Are we not? Did I say that out loud? Okay. Listen, are you following this Daily Wire, Steven Crowder? Because I thought about you today as somebody who has his own platform that you monetize and create a livelihood for yourself, which people can get to how? Tell them.
Yeah, Stand Up with Pete Dominick is my daily podcast. I host it, I book it, I edit it, I produce it every day out of my lumberjack shed here in just north of New York City. And you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. But I've got a lot of thoughts about this situation, a lot of thoughts. My main my main outrage lies around the idea of really untalented people making a lot more money than me and realizing that I'll never be able to do what they do because I won't just sell anything. But more importantly, sponsor wise, but more importantly, I won't say anything. And I certainly won't say things I don't believe. And I most importantly won't do what a lot of popular people do, which is try to get people outraged purposely, because that's what generates more viewers, more clicks, more engagement, more subscribers, more money. There's no way about it, but I can't do that. I can't sleep at night if I were to be that guy.
This is why you're on this show. And I know this about you. It's called integrity, Pete Dominick. It's called integrity. Which is it's not very abundant today among people who produce content, and including those that are on networks, on cable outlets. There's no integrity with the producers there. I don't struggle with this at all because I'm creating the world in which I want to live. Right. So that is a long game approach that requires patience and sitting in the soil and 2x2, 4x4, word of mouth, not trying to chase the algorithms or the dollars, but just really produce content that feeds people. So information and also feeds their soul. So, there's I feel like just like when Oprah had that period of time where she wasn't number one because the world was doing, throwing chairs and You Are Not the Father. And that became like the way, because this was the beginning. I remember it was the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, when Oprah fell from number one because she refused to do that. And she stayed the course, even though she slipped to 2 and 3 behind people like, Jenny Jones and Ricky Lake and, folk like that. Yeah. And it came back around because at some point the children's tummies hurt when they get cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. At some point, the children going to say, I'm not growing anymore. I'm still 4'1" and I'm 20. How did this happen? Well, you ate cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the same happens to your spirit. So here's my question to the audience. Let me put it out. 866-801-8255. We say we don't like the things that are out there, but how many of you are clicking on the things that I'm talking shade room for the folk who are melanated. I'm talking all of the edges snatching headlines, the things that are gossipy. We're going to talk about Lil Boosie today. How many of y'all spend time? How much of your time is spent on things that do not nourish you? And it doesn't nourish you, but you're thinking it's harmless, but it's really not. It's really not. And I can't wait to have this conversation on Monday. For you as a content producer, is there an equal and opposite? This is science, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. is there an equal and opposite to the blather, the nonsense put out by Ben Shapiro and the Candace Owens and the thing that gave rise to a Donald Trump? Is there an equal and opposite, Pete Dominick?
Is there an equal and opposite in general in the genre of talk? I would say no, certainly not in terms of, there's two categories that you could be asking about. It's kind of, you're leaving that open. There's certainly not anything like that on the left or in progressive media, or there just isn't. No one in progressive media has that many listeners and makes that much money. And more importantly, no one in progressive media is the tail that wags the dog in terms of making, in this case, Democratic or progressive lawmakers at the state or national level, from not making them influence in them the right legislation. AOC and Bernie Sanders aren't influenced by the most powerful name in progressive media. They're really not. That's not how it works. That's not the feedback loop. That's not the case on the right. And part of that is just in terms of the way that people think and the way that they take in content and how they want, whether they want detail and nuance and thoughtfulness the way they get in your conversation, my conversation, even on an NPR type format, or do they want someone, really animated and divisive and screaming about who goes in the bathrooms at the schools? Like, that's good stuff.
All right. Candace Owens, whose name I rarely evoke, just because you say a person's name, you keep them alive. I believe that with my whole heart.
Yeah.
Her latest rant is about therapy. Therapies are made up. It's a liberal thing. It's, the left has made we're all mentally ill. And I went to therapy and it didn't help me. Obviously it didn't help you because you are a mess. But I think about those harmful things, during the pandemic and all of the harmful things. People who are vaccinated were anti-vax on their platforms. There's something about the dishonesty beyond the flamethrowing, because I think both of us have personalities that people will be drawn to. Either they love it or they hate it. And those are both good emotions, because you're going to tune in, especially if you can't stand us. You're still going to tune in. We know that is key metrics. But we're not going to tell people things that will harm them, right? Even if we tell them good things in a passionate way.
Not knowingly.
No,
I'm
true.
sure I have, but not on purpose.
Right. Not as a business model. So let me just give people. So I didn't know who Steven Crowder was until this week. Yeah. I never heard the name.
Yeah.
Clearly he's not in my universe. I don't listen to him. Didn't know who he was. Daily Wire, never clicked on it until today. I've never been on the website until today. It is an aggregate of news. I'm putting up air quotes, and there's some news stories. They have a story about Donald Trump having to drop his lawsuit against Letitia James. They had that up there, which is a great news story because it was frivolous, and he got fined $1 million for even, and it's a warning, like keep going, buddy, and we're going to fine you and you're not going to be, like the outcome. So he dropped his lawsuit against the AG of New York, right? So that's on the site. But they also have a paywall where you get access to the racist, horrible Ben Shapiro, the racist, horrible Candace Owens, and others. And they wanted to hire and bring onto the platform Steven Crowder, who apparently has this amazing following on YouTube. And I think it's he have like 30 million, 3 million, 3.5 million, 3.9 million. I think he has 3.9 million subscribers to his YouTube channel, because I went on there today. Here's what they were offering him, y'all. $50 million for 4 years with a clause to re-up for an additional 2 years for $25 million. And Steven Crowder turned it down and then went on his YouTube channel and talked about it. And then the founder or the co-creator of Daily Wire did an hour-long, his last name is Boring. It was the most boring. I tried to listen to the whole thing. It was so boring. Y'all like, you got the right name. Pete, what do you know about this story?
Let me try to, for folks who hadn't heard about this controversy, I'll just try to give you a little background, and then I'll tell you why it's really important. There's a very important point to be learned about this, which is that conservatives don't actually believe in so much of the principles that they espouse. Specifically, I mean, it's easy to talk about moral principles, but around economic principles, like something like the free market. They're constantly talking about the free market. And in this situation, Steven Crowder stupidly explains, I don't even realize, I'm not sure he even will ever realize how embarrassed he should be for not understanding free market principles that he espouses, because this is all the whole deal was. Crowder basically got this offer from the Daily Wire to come join them for like $15 million a year or $50 million over 4 years. But in the contract, which he put up on camera and showed everybody, it had all these clauses, which were, if you get deplatformed from YouTube and your show no longer is allowed to appear there, we will be paying you 25% less in this deal per year. And it goes on to talk about other platforms. If you lose your platform on Twitter or Facebook was another big one. And he went and showed this to everybody. And his argument was, his whole thing was, the Daily Wire, he cleverly never said their name, but which is also not clever. And he's probably thinking about legal issues, but he said they're in bed with the big tech because they're for silencing me. The Daily Wire, if YouTube no longer allows me to spew my horrible hatred and dangerous rhetoric and misinformation, if they no longer allow that, then they're going to take me off YouTube, and the Daily Wire is not going to support me, which means the Daily Wire is lying about who they are. They're not conservatives who believe in free speech. And it's just the most bizarre argument for anybody to make, because the bottom line is you, Karen, know, and anybody that knows that works in business or works in media, it's simple. Listen, we're signing you, Stephen Crowder. We're giving you a ton of money because you can generate a ton of money in views on YouTube, on Facebook, and all these things in ad revenue. And that's why we're going to go into business with you. And they're saying, but if you can't, we're not going to pay you that money. That's the most normal deal. There's nothing controversial about that. But Crowder thinks he's making an argument about how they're on the side of YouTube. YouTube, Twitter, Final Point, Facebook, all the rest of them, they have their right to get rid of anybody, any one of us they want. They do. They can. I no longer work at SiriusXM, not because of any hard feelings. They got rid of my channel. They built me. I got nothing but great things to say about my experience there, but they didn't re-sign me. I wasn't even bitter, much less like filing a lawsuit. Like, that's business. They killed the channel, whatever. Like, things happen, and you don't go make them public and say it looks so horrible for him. It makes the Daily Wire look pretty smart, but we'll see who wins in the minds of the MAGA movement, because Crowder,
he's got the microphone. I was gonna say he's bigger than the Daily Wire, even if they have all of these other things, because I don't even know what a Daily Wire is. But the $50 million though, because I always tell folk, if they're willing to pay you X, that means you're bringing in at least 3 times that. So they said Ben Shapiro is making $100 million a year. Pete Dominick, I'm like $100 million a year. Are you what? How? He's
it's so hard for me because I started doing this so much longer than both those guys did. And even worse, Stephen Crowder used to say that he was a New York City stand-up comedian. I am, or certainly was for 15 years, a New York City comedian in every possible way. Every New York City comedian that I came up with at that time knew me, and I knew them, and nobody knew him because he was lying. Amy Schumer called him out on Red Eye about that. It was wonderful. People should go look that up. But it's hard to know how much, quote, better they're doing than me. But as I said earlier, like, I don't end up more than a moment of envy, because I would never do what they're doing, which is what's required to get those types of numbers, and it only works really on the right. There's nothing like that in any way where we're talking about anti-racism or anti-sexism or renewable energy.
I believe, is it because they're not enough? So 866-801-8255. I don't get involved in left-right politics because I don't think people even divvy themselves up that way, except people who think they're on the left or on the right. These become like labels and talking points more so than actual identity. I think people vote, like if you live in New York or New Jersey, which, I'm in the tri-state area, you could have a Republican governor for 2 years and you could have a Democratic governor for 2 years. You can have a Republican mayor, then you can have a Democratic mayor. Dumpster fires, both of them, Giuliani to Adams. But it goes back and forth, because people are not Republicans or Democrats. They are star chasers or star effers. Like, we like who we like. It's not even about whether somebody is qualified. I like that name. I like how that person talks. I like how they carry themselves. So it's more that than anything. So my question is, not more so than there are not enough people on the right who care about truth, justice in the American way, whatever that is. But I just feel like there's a part in people's salivary glands or something that is not being touched, that it's only a matter of time before there is going to be somebody that speaks the right things, that cares about human beings. Obama had it. If we're going to be, if he were a social media person, he could have gotten those numbers.
I think I disagree. I agree with you about
Okay.
I think I disagree only because of what we see. So if we're just talking about media and not necessarily even politics, and if we eschew the labels entirely, the question I'd put out to you and everybody in this case is take one format, anyone you want, really, but certainly the easiest one that everybody knows is cable news. Fox News, every single night for years and years and day, just crushes the other two major news platforms, CNN and MSNBC, together. And I think anybody who wants to can answer why. And that's where I start. And then we can talk about podcasts and YouTube and why they do well versus anybody that's, without using any labels, anybody else, period, on almost any platform. And by the way, it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of amazing voices that are, I'm trying not to use labels, but that aren't, these screaming maniacs, I'm going to say, on the right. There's lots, and lots of them are doing well. I'm doing okay, but I'm not making, I drive used cars. I have an above ground pool. My kids are going to state schools. I mean, I'm pretty excited about that.
All right.
I wear flannel.